Shadow here, Shadow shoot shot. You got the Shadow, you got the Alexander Storm. We're here and we're doing another episode. Tonight we're gonna talk about jumping right into it, man. We're talking about what killed WCW. I know there's there is a series on Vice right now, right? That's doing a whole docu series on who killed WCW. But the real question is what killed WCW. And yeah, of course, you can say very one simple thing is that yeah, who's in charge of WCW? It's Eric Bischoff, and Eric Bischoff was the basically is like the head is the one that basically is in charge of what happens. So today we're going to discuss that on this episode of the Shadow Shoot Shot. So jumping right into it, ladies and gentlemen, let's do it. Of course, Eric Bischoff was in charge of WCW. He made all the big decisions. He's got the opportunity to create magic. And at the beginning, he did. He did some fantastic things. He bring in Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hulk Hogan, and revitalizing Hulk Hogan's career. But there are key elements of that process that went on that we can really just break down and really identify and give clarity to. And that is this. One first, as the first episode started off, and he talked about the dirt sheets and the internet and all of that kind of stuff, basically taking a jab at the guy named Dave Meltzer. And let me be very clear because I'm not famous, but I'm well known. And back then in the 90s, the Squared Circle Talk on Professional Wrestling was a very popular show. We did ratings. We didn't do like the thing on radio, but we did television ratings, and our ratings were right there under Howard Stern. And there was like one or two other sports shows that were there that had somewhat of basic ratings, but we were like basically the number two show on television for many, many years. We did promotions with WCW. And Zane Bresloff was the contact and connection with WCW. We did fantastic interviews, great giveaways. We did on location promotions with WCW. And I'm bringing all that to say is this. This talk on professional wrestling did play a part in the world of professional wrestling in a big way back in the 90s. Back before ruthless aggression started, and right when WCW started to kick in and go up towards the top ratings, as Mr. Bischoff show is. What is that? 83 weeks? Is it? Is it called 86 weeks?
weeks.
Is it okay? They were number one.
I think it's 83 weeks, man.
Being number one for 83 weeks, congratulations, fantastic for you. Well, guess what? I think we were number one for a couple of weeks, going back and forth against what Howard Stern live on E Network. Like, if you picture that and you imagine Howard Stern on the E channel, and then you switching the channel and there's just a screen with words on it, and then you're hearing someone in the background like I'm talking right now, and it's me, the Shadow, Top Wrestling Show. That was getting as good as ratings or better ratings than Howard Stern. So saying all that to say is what WCW did was they got to a level to where the ratings were good, where they were kicking the WWF's butt. And it was a question on how and why. And now, if you ask this question, there is the what. And that is Vince McMahon got complacent. He got lazy. He had no competition. So he basically felt like, I don't need you. I don't need you. I can create new stars just like that. And Vince McMahon got to a point to where it was like his cockiness was his downfall during that time because you had people like Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and a lot of other guys that basically he let their contracts expire. And then Eric Bischoff said, don't re-sign with WWE, sign with me. And he started grabbing up these name stars. And that was one of the key factors of how WCW became popular, not just because it was the NWO thing, which was the key element of like the build because it was something different and something new, but it was because we started to see established name stars from WWF coming on board to WCW, legitimizing them. I mean, you had Hogan there, but then Hogan, everybody was tired of it. It's burnt out. It's like, okay, dude, say your prayers, train hard, eat your vitamins and all that kind of stuff. It's like it was done. It was passe. So it's like coming to WCW and doing the exact same thing people were bored with. So what was the change that made things happen? It was very simple. It was the hype and the mystique behind the whole NWO. Who's going to join NWO next? Who's going to be the next member? Who's going to turn next? Because when Hogan turned, that was like one of the biggest
Yeah.
moments in wrestling history. So, you think about those elements, you say this is what was the success of WCW. Now, what killed WCW was there's a couple of things that you can mention. You can say it is Hogan and Sting, which was a build for like over a year. The biggest match of wrestling history was to take place, and Hogan did not put Sting over clean. That was the nail, the dagger that killed WCW. It was over with. They just didn't know it yet. And the problem with that was Hogan had creative control over any and everything that he did. And as people joke around and say all the time, a lot of stuff is like, "Hey Hogan, I got this great idea, man. We could do this and we could do that." He's like, "Oh, that's not going to work for me, brother." And then that's it. It's over.
Mhm.
You can't discuss it. So from what they said on the show and everything, it was like the vibe that Sting was giving off was like setting Hogan at uneasy and stuff. So he decided to go in another direction when it came to the finish. Well, here's the problem with that. Sting walked into the situation knowing that Hogan had creative control over that match. He could decide whether or not Sting was going to go over clean or whether or not there was going to be a screw job or whatever it was. Sting knew walking into that match, not the day of the match, but in and during that match, he could change his mind at any point, go to the ref and say, go to the other finish. And then that's what they would have to do. And that was the reason why Sting felt a little off or standoffish or whatever it was and stuff. And I don't blame Sting because it's like you're dealing with a egomaniac, and everybody has an ego, but like
Of course.
a prima donna like Hulk Hogan that can basically dictate what happens at the end of the match during the match. You feel uneasy because you built this up for an entire year, and then you have no assurance that this is what's going to happen. Now, if you ask me, after that happened, Sting should have left WCW and he should have signed with WWE, jump ship, but it didn't happen. He stuck there to the end of it. And I'm saying, and I'm bringing all of this up to bring a perfect example. Right now, the Lakers have LeBron James, and they've had him for a couple of years. He was able to get them a NBA title. Fantastic. Right now, the Clippers have Kawhi Leonard. He has yet to deliver on anything, not even to play 60 games in a season or whatever, or 70 games in a season. He hasn't delivered. These are two big megastars. LeBron, of course, is a bigger star, but Kawhi is as well. So when you think about those two things, you have to ask one question. What do you do next? How do you get to that next title? How do you even get to the NBA Finals? You got to bring on new talent. You got to build new talent. You got to develop talent into a level and develop a system or what it can, an environment that is acceptable to the wrestlers or to the NBA players that are on that team so that they feel comfortable and they feel like they're going somewhere. Terrence Mann, I really feel like his career has been wasted in the Clippers, and I don't think that Terrence Mann will be able to recover because unless he leaves. If he would have went to Philly, yeah, it'd have been Eminem, Man, and Maxie. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because in WCW, there was Chris Benoit,
Yep.
Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio. I'm just naming those three. Oh, Chris Jericho. I got to add those. Those
Mm-hmm.
are the four. And then during that time, that was, and I mentioned these four because there's a reason. These guys were considered cruiserweights. These guys were not considered world champion material. They were not considered guys that would ever be more than a mid carder. Maybe if they won a mid card title, cool. But Eric Bischoff created or helped develop the cruiserweight championship for these guys to wrestle for the cruiserweight championship. Rey Mysterio, when he wrestled Kevin Nash never thought once to elevate or help elevate Rey Mysterio. They all wanted to wrestle these guys because these guys make other guys look great in the ring, but they never
Yeah.
wanted to put them over. And that brings back to Hogan refused to put Sting over clean. So in the process of all of these things that are happening, WWE is doing one thing. They're building and creating new stars. That's where the ruthless aggression era came, the
Hmm.
attitude era came. Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Stone Cold, The Rock, all of these guys elevated their game and they became like superstars. And that's when the WWE became more competition again and became a bigger product and brand. And so when you say and ask the question, what killed WCW, it is the fact that they never built and never took the time to build new stars. You could have made Benoit, Jericho, Guerrero, any of those three guys world champions, but you didn't. And then they left and went to WWE. And guess what? Every single one of those guys became champions. Jericho, Benoit, uh,
Yeah.
uh, Eddie, and Rey Mysterio. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. Let me ask you something though. In that point, one, have you ever heard of a wrestler controlling his own match in the way that Hogan did? Like, do you think, like, like maybe let's say a la The Rock right now probably has a little bit more control,
Mhm.
but like normally, do they get that much control in the ring?
Well, in the history of wrestling, no one has ever had creative control. Only
Okay.
person that has was Hogan. Now you could say the Undertaker. The Undertaker had respect.
Hmm.
He had the longevity. He had seniority, or should I say, and stuff. And he
Hmm.
had input in like, I don't want to do that, and give a reason why he didn't want to do that or why he felt like someone wasn't ready. But he wasn't forced to do things. So that's the closest you can get is like the Undertaker. Yeah, and of course, like now, the Rock comes in, say, I don't want to do that, or I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
John Cena, same thing. John Cena
Okay.
would refuse to work with people. And what was it? I think there was some interview or something where one of the wrestlers, a wrestler used to be in WWE, used to say John Cena was difficult because he would put on paint this pictures like, yeah, I'm whatever the writers say, but it's like in reality, he was like, not working with him, he's not ready, or whatever and stuff. So,
Mm.
and there is like, look, there's a cockiness, just as I
Of course.
mentioned LeBron James. LeBron James, yeah, like he had input on the last what 5 coaches at the Clippers. I mean, at the Clippers, at the Lakers, he had input, a lot of input and a lot of influence. Kawhi Leonard, he had a lot of influence on bringing in Paul George, getting rid of Shea Gillis Alexander, and so you have to live with the decisions that you make. And sometimes they're not the best decisions. Sometimes you got to let the professionals do their job. So
Hmm.
when it comes to WCW, they didn't let the professionals do their jobs. They didn't let people actually book something that made sense and build towards other things and other storylines. There were no other storylines in WCW other than the NWO. And like, okay, cool, fantastic. Opening segment and then maybe ending segment. But in the middle, what is it? The beginning, middle, and end of a show? There was not that. It was just chaos, surprise, action. It's like lights, camera, action, go. Monkeys in the zoo, do what you do.
Hmm.
And
Well,
I think that's an issue.
Well, also you got to think too, though. That's not just out of ego. You had Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Hulk Hogan towards they had left their prime and they were going down
Mhm.
to near the end. It was fear.
Yeah,
They're gonna hold everybody back because they want to still keep that limelight.
yeah, it was
So
hot.
there was no option to make that. So while I absolutely, I think Kevin Nash said this on, I think he was doing Stone Cold show years ago, that he said
Mhm.
that Eric Bischoff was like, the night that they had like really had jumped into the ring and announced they were coming over, and everybody, all the audience members, just kind of lost their crap. He said that Eric Bischoff was like, in the back, all happy and everything. He was like, "Nah, man." He said, "That's when I knew that the WCW was over with." Because he said,
Yeah.
you just put over 2 WWE stars, or at that time WWF, and you guys are cheering with you. He said he knew at
Mhm.
that point and everything that was the down point. And I can see that too, because when you're basically saying that the stars that we haven't developed here don't mean anything, and these two guys that jump over from the very popular federation, now they're the claiming the top spot. Well, what did they say about your entire competition in that back locker room? you
Right.
know
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
as we're getting into this, personally, I I loved the documentary. It was really cool. I thought the two people you're saying like what killed WCW. Uh, there's two people responsible for that: Eric Bischoff and Ted Turner. Eric Bischoff's the dude that ran around and came up with the ideas and gimmicks, and he didn't work like you said, built the talent around. Ted Turner was one of those owners that was not very hands-on in the same exact way that Vince McMahon was. Like Ted
Mhm.
Turner, it was a hobby to Ted Turner to have wrestling. It
Yeah,
was Vince
yeah.
McMahon's life to have, and that's the difference. If you had an owner, when you're just dealing out money, okay, well, here's the money, here it goes. But you're not really kind of into it every day. You're not checking on it. You don't have a passion for it in that same
Mhm.
exact way. Well, then you can let people run the ship that, probably at one point they should have just had someone else in creative control along with Bischoff that would have had those ideas, a la, like you said, bringing up the different talent. So I think that those are the two individuals in my eyes that really hurt the business. Ted Turner being a non-existent owner and kind of letting the people in the asylum run it, and then Eric Bischoff, being happy for 83 weeks and patting himself on the back.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? And yeah, you could throw some blame at Ted Turner because he gave him a blank check and just let him just do what you want, make my wrestling really good. And it's like that's not enough, bro. But at the same time, I would say that was probably a good thing because sometimes the billionaire situation doesn't work. Look at AEW. You know, there's a
But the
lot of
difference of
issues.
it is that Tony Khan is a complete fan. I think Ted Turner
He's
enjoyed
a wrestling fan.
wrestling,
Yeah.
but again, there's a difference. We always have this point where we talk about that there's a difference between, like, if you're doing something as a hobby or is
Hmm.
it a job?
Right.
If you respect it as a job, you show up on time, you do it a hobby, you do it when you want to do it. And like I said, Ted Turner, just like wrestling, but he was in, if the numbers weren't really working, it wasn't working right. But many times when you own something, at one point you come in and say, well, wait a minute, I'm looking at the numbers every night and this is not working out in the same exact way. What should we do? No, he was fine
Hmm.
where when it was going down and everything, the shit was kind of, well, we're not going to do wrestling anymore. It's like he wasn't invested 100% in it.
Yeah, yeah, and look, I get that, but here's a perfect example. This is a tweet
Okay.
from Tony Khan. He says, wake up the bots and tell them that we're having fun over here." Another one of his tweets. I book wrestling for the sickos because that's what I am and that's who I care about. That's a tweet from the
Yeah.
owner of
Yeah.
AEW.
Mhm.
Now, and because we're on the subject of what killed WCW, and Who Killed WCW? That
Mhm.
tweet came out this week. And
Mhm.
I'm going to, Shadow knew before you know, going to say that Shadow knows that Tony Khan just put that nail like in this, you know how you mark it, and then you put the nail there, and right before
Yeah.
you raise your hand and hammer, the
Yeah.
nail is there, Tony. The nail is there because basically what you've done is you've told all the loyal wrestling fans, the purest of wrestling fans, the casual wrestling fans
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
you're not making television for us. I say us as a former professional wrestler and as a lifetime pure wrestling fan that I now understand. I now get it.
Mhm.
Unlike Eric Bischoff, who basically thought he was doing things to make wrestling better,
Mhm.
you're just doing wrestling for yourself and for all the people that think the same way you do. And I can just break it down to like when you say what cute WCW,
Mhm.
and then when we have this conversation, it's probably the first of 2025, what cute AEW, it is you put on a show, a 2 hour show, and the wrestling matches are about 15 to 20 minutes. You put on a show where there is no build or segues that lead into giving us a reason for a particular match. You have not invested in any long-term storylines that has paid off yet. You are not perfect or should I say, correctly building new stars. And I'll start with the first, and that is wrestling matches. If you watch WWE, and I'm not saying that they should be like WWE, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying this. The fastest way for a wrestler to be injured is long television matches. The
True.
house shows are meant for the 20-minute matches.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the house shows are. And I say that 20-minute matches for house shows. But for television, your matches should be 6 to 12 minutes maximum. Normally, WWE used to do 4-minute or less matches because there was a lot of entertainment in between and a lot of interviews. But they did that to build up storylines and to build up feuds.
Sure.
And now, even when you watch on WWE now, it's like the main event can go 12 minutes on WWE programming, but most of their matches are less than 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And if you go into, if you watch AEW, the show starts, and then there's a commercial. The introduction of the wrestler, then there's a commercial. Then when they come back, they're still in the match. And then, look at this spot. And then they go into the commercial where they show it on a little screen, the split screen thing. They come back, match still going on. Half hour of the show is already gone. You're still in the first match.
Well, you know what? You know why, right? Because WWE did one aspect, because the same thing used to happen back in the day with WWE. That they would go and then the match would go in the commercial and everything. And then they learned the whole thing like they do in television, commercial breaks and scenarios. And they built their show around television and the commercials because they knew the sponsors, the money, the things. So they learned how to do television like that. And it's but AEW is just doing matches, doing stuff. And they haven't understood the commercial aspect of it. Now, I heard that they're getting supposed to be getting a new deal from Warner Brothers, technically, or TBS,
Discovery.
They're supposed to get a new deal. We'll see what that new deal is like, and I'm sure there's going to be some structure in the end to be like, hey, maybe do it at this time, break for commercial here, because it's just the point of discipline. Because if you're writing for television, there's a commercial break right here. When you turn on like something like NBC, ABC, it's not like the you're watching an episode and then it goes into the commercial, then you come back and then the actors are still going in the situation.
Right. Yeah. There's no cut. Yeah.
So I think the writers right there just have to learn how to write things. 15 minutes in the show, there's normally commercial one. The 12 minutes in is commercial two. Maybe they'll start learning that because they're leaving dollars on the table because they're probably irritating fans, because as you sit there, you're like, well, it's like, is it better for me to go to a live show than to watch this episode?
And you know what? I can give props to WCW because WCW at least, and that was the thing about Bischoff. He brought action production people from Hollywood to the table. And he helped elevate the production quality and then make it looking like bigger shows. But when you talk about AEW, it's like you need a showrunner. You need someone that knows and understands. It's like the commercial break's coming up. You call that into the referees here is like commercial break. And normally in wrestling, when in between and when your match goes over into a commercial, it is a rest hold, rest spot. Someone's thrown out the ring, and then it's just the blah, 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 entertaining. They're actually interacting with the fans during the commercial. And there's like, we're coming back from commercial. The referee gives them the signal, and these guys are coming back into the ring. And it's like, like nothing ever happened, or you missed something. And I think that's where AEW is missing those elements of just intersectors of. For me, if I was producing wrestling, AEW, I would make my matches as like, look, 6 minutes wrestling. I would do Mike. Give me 4 minutes of mic work and then give me 6 minutes of a wrestling match, and then let's go. And even if you do that for every single match, it is guy comes in, he picks up the mic, he runs his mouth, someone comes out, referee come down, they do a match. Boom, go to the next one. Guy runs his mouth, blah, blah, blah. And then they say, okay, later in the show, I'm going to wrestle you. Fine, fantastic. But you set up a lead in to specific matches to give me a reason to get excited about it. And then sometimes you build up for, okay, I will face you next week. Now, of course, the fans that are there this week are not happy, but For next week, it's setting it up and it's building towards. You have to build your matches, otherwise they don't mean anything. And honestly, I fast forward through most of AEW because it's like this guy's gonna get hurt, something's wrong, is gonna go or whatever, and it's like,
Mhm.
okay, bro, you know what? I don't need 20 minutes of this. I don't need 20 minutes of a match. I just need and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because they do a lot of high spots in AEW. They do a lot
They
of
do.
dangerous moves in AEW. And that is because they're allowed it too much time to develop a match. Now, there's not a lot of storytelling in most of their matches. Some
Mhm.
matches do. And what I mean by storytelling is ooh, uh Kaiser, Ludwig
Mhm.
Kaiser in WWE. Oh my
Mhm.
God. The promo that he cut in the video package that they did this past Monday, fantastic. I
Yeah.
always said he's a sleeper. This guy, okay, cool, fantastic. Ludwig Kaiser is the real deal. Second generation wrestler. He is going to be or has the potential to be a superstar and maybe a world champion. But what I love about him is this. He cuts the deadliest promos that makes you want to see him get his butt whooped.
Mhm.
And then he gets in the ring and he delivers on his business. But what I loved about this last one with him and Sheamus was he told a story. He attacked Sheamus's leg. He got him into the ring. He started working on his leg, got him out the ring, worked on his leg some more, worked on his leg some more, got him back into the ring, did some moves. Sheamus did his comeback, blah, 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 bang, bang, boom. He comes out and then boom, hits him again, attacks him. Ludwig attacks the leg, and then he gets a win over Sheamus. That's wrestling storytelling. People don't know nothing about that anymore. All they see is
Mhm.
oh. It is all of this jumping, flipping, and flopping, and dangerous moves. These piles flip around 3 times, pile drive him on his head. Oh, but I protected him. Oh, not this time. I might have broken his neck. Dane
Mhm.
Bryanson, why you like might retire? Dangerous moves. Edge.
Well.
Why is Edge at for months? Jumping over the top of a damn cage at
Mhm.
54 years old. Why?
Yeah.
For what reason? What part of the storyline required you to jump off of the goddamn cage?
Well,
That's the question.
people just want to see the hype, man. But the problem of it is, and you just said it, second generation wrestler, someone who has been probably taught the proper way to do wrestling, build up
Yeah.
storylines. Someone has been probably seen all of his entire life how to cut promos. That's the difference between someone that's been in the business and Tony Khan. That guy
Mm-hmm.
watching outside the business. It's very hard. It's like right now, if you gave me an opportunity to go out there to Dodger Stadium and play first base, that's gonna be a terrible first baseman. I'm gonna make a terrible first baseman. But
Yeah.
if I grew up in a household with, like, my father who played for several teams, guess what? I'm having that knowledge pumped into me. I'm knowing how to be
Mm-hmm.
on that first base and how to play correctly.
Yeah.
That's the difference between when you have somebody outside the business that pops in and somebody who has been trained since day one, who has watched. That's why you look at people like The Rock. You look at,
Mm-hmm.
Chavo Guerrero in the days. When you have the opportunity to absorb all that in, and you have somebody constantly preaching right way, wrong way, right way, wrong way, it sets in, it becomes emotion. I think that's the real difference
That's the
between,
difference.
you know, the AEW scenario. And the same
That
thing with Ted Turner. The difference of it is that, that's why Vince McMahon, and unfortunately, whatever his situation was, he was successful because he grew up seeing
yeah.
that. He was
Mm-hmm.
bred to do that. That's the
Mm-hmm.
difference, brother.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's the case. But it's also you have to have the will and the desire to do this, and
True.
you also have to have the right training and tools. You have to have the right mentors. And I take no knock at Taz or anything, but I'll be honest. Taz's son is not doing they're not doing him any justice. This kid is not ready for the big times. He's not ready for television. This kid needs a lot of work. Like honest, God's honest truth. And I think that these guys in AEW have too much freedom on what they
Hmm.
do. And I think that that's one of the biggest problems in that company. It has to be ordered, it has to be structured. And that brings me back to what killed WCW. There was no order. There was no structure in WCW. They went at a pace of like chaos. all the time. That was the formula. Let's create
Mm-hmm.
chaos. Let's have a shocking moment. And Sting coming down from the Raptors, Sting putting on
Mm-hmm.
the Crow outfit. Look, that was fantastic. The build of a storyline of Sting taking down Hogan for over a
Mm-hmm.
year. That was fantastic. But the problem was that they never thought about, like, maybe we can get a couple of key guys that we can put with Sting and then get the rub, as these guys are also the heroes of the story, taking down the NWO. But they just went on from the NWO to the Wolfpack to the LWO and then to where Paul Heyman was smart enough to do the BWO, the Blue World Order, and a parody of that's how bad it got, to where you got Paul Heyman and ECW doing a parody of the NWO called the BWO. And I bet you if the WWE brought the BWO back, it would be more
They
popular
probably would be.
than this
Mm-hmm.
LWO. Because God's honest truth, Triple H is doing a great job right now. I think that
Oh
the
yeah.
direction that WWE is going, but like the LWO is done. Like, kill it. Like, it's over with, bro. It was one of the worst parts of WCW. And just because you have a group of Latinos together doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean you need to call them the Latino World Order.
True, true.
Like, and I, God's on the truth. Just create a new faction, create a new group, create a new logo, create whatever. But just stop with the LWO, and I hope that
Well,
they do dissolve that really soon.
I did hear Shadow that they did the WWE did file for, I think it's probably TKO now, file for a trademark for WCW.
Oh
So,
well, they own it.
something might be stirring up from that. You talk about bringing in some other stuff. Something might be headed to that
Well,
direction, man.
and and it's just as we get ready to wrap, I
Mm-hmm.
would just say that, like, here's the difference when you look at now, and we'll get into the next episode of like the now and like who's
Mm-hmm.
next, who's the big star. But for on this instance here, here's the key factors that's just going under the radar for most people, and no one's really talking about it. Is WWE has a working relationship with TNA.
Mm-hmm.
WWE has brought in the TNA Women's Champion. She is
Mm-hmm.
now in the television of NXT. And then
Mm-hmm.
now they're talking about, because AJ Styles, when they say this is a house that AJ Styles built, that's
Mm-hmm.
TNA. AJ Styles built TNA. He was
Yeah.
the man. He was the
Mm-hmm.
Sting of TNA. So looking at AJ may make a run there and everything, there's something happening that most people are
Something's going
not
on.
notifying, and that is
Mm-hmm.
January 2025, WWE goes to Netflix. And what
Mm-hmm.
if that leave? A big open gap with the USA Network. So
Mm-hmm.
what if WWE is building towards TNA to be on USA Network?
You never
And
know. It's a
now, guess what? They're a
mm-hmm.
competition for who? AEW. And
Mm-hmm.
AEW, you might have some problems if TNA gets back on TV and stuff, because now you got WWE now like trading wrestlers to TNA programming. Yeah.
Hey, it's something beneficial about it. Look, it's not
Yeah,
done that kindness of their own heart. It's some form of some business transaction that's going on, man. And
absolutely.
that draws us back to a transition of business and everything. First of all, if you've gotten this far in and you haven't liked, commented, or the number one thing, subscribe, then you're missing great content by the legendary Shadow, who is on this network all the time. The Shoot Shot is the number one podcast that we have on the network. Please make sure you're doing that. Second thing is that we've been seeing, I've seen it on some of your Facebook posts, some of your Instagram posts. People are asking and everything because you made an announcement that some of the old N Square Circle
Hmm.
archives will be
Yeah.
put up, and that is being worked on right now. That will be on all major platforms of the podcast realm. So if you're anything from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to iHeartRadio, it's going to be up everywhere. But that is being actively worked on. That's not something that we jump into and it's like a 5-minute thing. That is going through hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of the
Yeah.
best old episodes and putting that together, redoing the audio. A lot of that stuff was just radio. So it's like, they're trying to redo the audios and everything. So that is constantly being worked on. When that does premiere, I'm sure you can actually catch Shadow on his Instagram or over his X accounts, or you can do it over here for same thing, Shadow Knows Network. It's Shadow Knows on X, Shadow Knows Network on Instagram, and same thing on Facebook. So, we got some exciting news for the world, and Shadow is really coming back, man.
Yeah, and I'm excited about it. Going through some of the archives and stuff, and it's like, honestly, I don't even remember that I interviewed half the people that are on some of these shows, like the Sandman, of course DDP, but like a lot of ECW guys came on the show, and we got those in. Shane Douglas, I forgot we did Shane Douglas a couple of times, and that guy had like a wealth of wrestling knowledge in his head, and he gave some great interviews. Terry Funk. Wow. Yeah, we had Terry Funk. We did the Cauliflower Alley Club with Bobby the Brain Heenan. Man, I was just going back and looking at, listening to and stuff. It was just like, wow, incredible. Like we had some really incredible interviews. WCW, we had a lot of WCW guys on as well and stuff. But I'm excited about it too. The archives are coming. And so you guys get ready, because those of you that have been asking for it, you'll finally get it and stuff. So we got some old clips from the studio too, but the archive shows are really cool. So that's coming. And then don't forget PixelsPlasticInk, the PPIs are on every Friday. The podcast is on every Friday and stuff, where they discuss pixels, film, television, plastics, action figures, collectibles, and ink, comic books. So check out PixelsPlasticInk's podcast, and the crew. Mr. Storm is one of the hosts of the show, and you guys can enjoy it. And give a shout out to one of our fantastic advertisers, Bad Travel. Bad Travel is a sponsor of the Shadow Knows Network, and I just wanted to just give a shout because I enjoy the commercials, and I hope that you guys enjoy them and support them as well and stuff. Subscribe and click and subscribe for sure and stuff. But in the coming weeks, we're going to be touching on some really good subjects. We're going to be touching on some main subjects. We're identifying how we're going to build this element of what we're doing here. The Shadow Shoot Shot is going to be about subjects, titles, and just keying in on honing on things and stuff. And as I mentioned, in old stories as well and stuff. And as I go back at the Zane Breslov, when I say we did stuff with WCW, we did some great stuff, and you will find some of that stuff on some of our archive stuff. But like one of the highlights was I got a chance to walk with the Macho Man Randy Savage at Bash at the Beach. It was Huntington Beach. We did a big old promotion. We was there live. We was at the beach. And then it was like I was interviewing guys backstage and everything. And then it's like the match is coming up. And then the Macho Man says, "Shadow, walk with me." And I'm like, "What?" And so I'm walking with the Macho Man, walking on the beach. He's getting ready for his freaking match, and I'm walking with him. I'm like, "Man, bro, like you killing it. You're doing it, Macho Man, man." And he's like, "Brother, we just got to keep doing it. We got to keep pushing, brother. We're doing some great things here, bro." And then it's like, to where the cutoff point was, where he's going to the ring, and then I stopped. But it was just a highlight of a moment for me doing the Top Wrestling Show, Squared Circle, to like say that I walked with Macho Man almost to ringside, and he just told me, he said, "Shadow, walk with me." What? So that was cool. That like come on, man, you don't get better than that. So we got some cool short stories and some longer stories and stuff. But yeah, tune in next week or tune into the next episode where we'll be discussing WWE and AEW future. Who is it? Tune in next week, ladies and gentlemen, for the Shadow and for Alexander Storm. Hey, as always, as the Shadow said, tune in if you got the guts.